Typically, victims of crucifixion would be left on a cross for days, left to succumb to the elements, whether they were dead or alive. Since Jesus was crucified the day before the Sabbath, the Romans needed to hurry up. In an effort to speed up death, the soldiers would often break the crucified person's knees. When they approached Jesus, they saw that he was already dead. But just to make sure, one of the soldiers stabbed his side with a spear. This quick thrust saved them the trouble of breaking his knees, and at the same time fulfilling a prophecy. But there are some legends of the spear that are intriguing. The story goes that the soldier that speared Jesus is known as Longinus, who converted to Christianity. The spear is known by several names: the Holy Lance, the Lance of Longinus, the Holy Spear, and the Spear of Destiny. The spear is venerated. It touched God. Its puncture proved that Jesus was dead. The soldiers that came with my resurrection village don't have a spear, so I'd like to make one for the scene since it played such an important role. Not much is described about the spear in the biblical accounts. Spears have been around throughout antiquity. But this spear was a Roman spear. I'm not an ancient weapons expert, but I know that Roman legionaries were equipped with a pilum, a throwing spear, a javelin, with its triangular spearhead, long metal shank, connecting shaft or tang, and a wooden shaft. We do have some idea what pila looked like and how they evolved through art from the time and recovered artifacts. Were pila used by the soldiers in Jerusalem at the time of Christ? It's pretty likely. They were stationed in a hostile environment, useful in combat, intimidating to civilian rebel-rousers, and their weight and length could have been effective in confirming a crucified person's death with one last final wound. There are numerous relics of the spear, each one with its own tale of acquisition and claims to authenticity. I could make my spear more recognizable, more legendary than the mass-produced pilum, more obviously a spear with a large spearhead. So what should a miniature spear look like for a resurrection village? Well, it goes back to what interests you, the historical or the legendary. I'm going to make both, a pilum and a spear with a menacing dagger. Should you want to take a stab at making a spear for a mini medieval scene or Halloween village, you can take my general instructions and modify however you like. I'm going to start with the wooden shaft. So here I've got some bamboo skewers and also some mini wooden dowels. I'm going to trim these just a little bit with a dull blade of an X-Acto knife. You can also use scissors, any kind of snippers really. You can leave these longer than needed, which is kind of recommended. You can always trim them to length later. Here I've dampened a foam brush with water, and I'm just going to dab this in some brown acrylic paint just to give the shaft a battle-worn color. I've got some polymer oven bake clay, and here I've just thinned out the polymer clay into a rope, and here I'm just flattening it out a little bit and shaping as I go along. I've also got a set of clay tools. This one is a knife, and it's kind of hard to see in the video, but it's got a slanted edge. This is great for making the pila's razor sharp blade if you angle the knife a little bit. This is just some plain old green floral wire, and I'm inserting this into the middle shank. This is just going to give it a little bit more stability and also help to connect it to the wooden shaft later on. And I'm just shaping out this connection. This will be a little bit clearer once we paint the pilum. When working with polymer clay, it's easier to take away than to add. So it is better just to start with one long piece and cut away from it and reshape than trying to make individual pieces. I'm making a small hole in the end of the wood. This is where my wire will fit into the wood. And now I'm just making a really big spearhead, just something that's a little bit more recognizable. Once I've got these shapes, I'm going to leave it directly on this parchment paper, and I'm going to just move the parchment paper to a metal sheet, and then I'm going to bake it according to the polymer clay instructions. When it comes out of the oven, it'll be a little bit hot, so you'll just need to let it cool. And once it's cool, dab the shaft with a little bit of Aleene's tacky glue, and then I'm going to put the green floral wire into this hole. And I've got a metallic gray here, so I'm going to paint all of the metal parts with this color. 1 coat should be enough, but I'm going to go ahead and do 2 just to make sure I have all of the polymer clay covered. Next comes painting this connection, the riveted tang. So I'm going to paint this with my wood color, the same color that I painted the wooden shaft with. And I'm going to do 2 coats of this. And then I'm going to take some of this green floral wire and paint on with the metallic gray 2 rivets on each side. And then I'm also going to paint in a line on the 2 sides. Here are our 2 pila, and here are the 2 spears, the more traditional spears. There are more Roman instruments that I'll be making for the Resurrection Village display, so be sure to check out those videos as well. And if you want to see a pilum in action, be sure to check out the description. I've got a link to a video below.